From coasting down mountain grades with the transmission in neutral to boxing in highway patrol cruisers with a wall of 40-ton trucks, the drivers of the 1970s treated the American interstate like their own private kingdom. They had their own language, their own radio network, and their own rulebook. But almost nothing in that rulebook was legal. These are 20 trucker tricks from the 70s that would get you arrested today. Quick bit of context before we roll. In the 70s, there were no electronic logs, no GPS tracking, no cameras in the cab. A driver in a Kenworth cab over was a ghost the moment he left the terminal. Enforcement meant one state trooper with a radar gun and a clipboard. That gap between the rules and reality is where all 20 of these tricks lived. And wait until you see what number 1 did to the entire country. Number 20, the Swindle sheet. Every driver was required to keep a paper logbook tracking hours behind the wheel. Drivers called them comic books because they were pure fiction. A trucker rolling through Nebraska at 2 in the morning would simply write down that he'd been asleep in the bunk since 9. Some drivers kept 2 complete logbooks, one showing legal hours for the inspector at the scale house and one real one for the company office so they'd actually get paid. Filling out a clean log and pencil at a truck stop counter was practically a professional skill. Today, federally mandated electronic logging devices are wired straight into the engine. The truck itself snitches on you. Falsifying logs now brings federal fines, out-of-service orders, and in crash cases, actual prison time. Number 19, the Georgia overdrive. Picture a loaded flatbed cresting a long mountain grade in the Appalachians. The driver pulls the shifter into neutral and just lets gravity take over. Coasting downhill out of gear saved fuel and picked up speed, and drivers called it Georgia overdrive, or Mexican overdrive depending on where you were fueling up. The problem was physics. Out of gear, you've got no engine braking at all, which means 80,000 pounds is riding entirely on drum brakes that fade as they heat up. Runaway truck ramps exist because of exactly this. Coasting a commercial vehicle downhill in neutral is now illegal in most states, and an automatic out-of-service order at inspection. And if a cop catches your tack at idle while you're rolling downgrade, you're done for the day. Number 18, boots on the radio. A legal CB radio in 1975 put out 4 watts of power, good for a few miles of range. But truckers wanted to talk from Amarillo to Oklahoma City. So they wired in linear amplifiers, which drivers called boots, boosting their signal to hundreds of watts. Some big rigs were pushing more power than small commercial radio stations. The FCC banned them because a trucker keying up outside town could bleed through every television set in the neighborhood. People's TVs would suddenly broadcast a gravel-voiced man discussing the location of a speed trap. The FCC actually ran enforcement sweeps with direction-finding vans hunting down the strongest offenders. Running a linear today still carries federal fines in the thousands per violation, and yes, they still catch people. Number 17. The Channel 19 Intelligence Network. This one wasn't a single trick. It was infrastructure. Channel 19 on the CB was a live, crowdsourced map of every police officer on the interstate, updated in real time, decades before smartphones. A driver spotting a patrol car would key up with the mile marker, the direction, and whether the bear was taking pictures, meaning running radar. Within minutes, every truck for 50 miles knew. Convoys slowed in perfect unison passing a trap, then hammered back up to speed. Police departments openly complained they'd become the most watched people on the highway. Now, sharing a cop's location isn't itself the crime, but everything the network was built to enable, the coordinated speeding, the scale dodging, the log fraud, is exactly what modern enforcement was redesigned to kill. Number 16, bear bait. Sometimes information wasn't enough, so drivers ran sacrifice plays. A convoy approaching a known speed trap would let one truck, or better yet some four-wheeler in a Trans Am, blast ahead at full throttle. The patrol car takes the bait, pulls out, and lights him up. And the moment that cruiser is occupied writing a ticket on the shoulder, an entire line of trucks rolls past at whatever speed they please. Drivers called the volunteer bear bait, and some guys genuinely enjoyed the role. After the national 55-mile-per-hour limit arrived in 1974, this became practically a team sport. Try coordinating that today, and prosecutors can frame organized enforcement evasion as criminal conspiracy, with CDL points that follow you across all 50 states. Number 15. Dodging the chicken coop. Way stations, or chicken coops in CB slang, were the one place a 70s trucker could actually get caught. Overweight, bad logbook, missing permits, it all surfaced at the scale. So drivers simply didn't go. The radio told them which coops were open, and a whole shadow atlas of two-lane detours existed for slipping around them. Locals in farm towns got used to seeing loaded Peterbilts rumbling down country roads past grain silos for no apparent reason. Some routes were so well established they had nicknames. Today, way stations use license plate readers, transponder systems, and cameras on the bypass routes themselves. Blowing past an open scale now gets you chased down, fined, and flagged in a federal database that follows your carrier around forever. But dodging the scale was amateur hour compared to what some drivers carried in their wallets. Number 14. The license collection. Before 1986, there was no national commercial driver's license. Each state issued its own, and nothing stopped a driver from holding all of them. So a trucker might carry licenses from Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma, and California in the same wallet. Get a speeding ticket in Texas? Hand over the Texas license and let the points pile up there while your Tennessee record stays spotless. Some drivers were functionally unsuspendable, spreading violations across 4 or 5 states like a gambler spreading chips. Congress killed this with the Commercial Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 1986, creating the single national CDL. Today, holding more than one license is itself a federal violation, and every ticket in every state lands on the same record. The wallet trick is extinct. Number 13. The plate swap. Registration and permits were expensive, especially for owner-operators running on thin margins. So small outfits with 3 trucks might buy proper plates and permits for one. When a truck was headed into a state with heavy enforcement, the good plates came off one tractor and bolted onto another in the truck stop parking lot. Base plates, fuel permits, sometimes entire identities moved between trucks like costumes. Inspectors mostly checked that paperwork existed, not that it matched the specific vehicle in front of them. Modern enforcement ended the party. Plates are tied to VIN numbers in linked databases, roadside inspectors scan everything, and running a swapped plate now escalates from a paperwork fine into charges for operating an unregistered commercial vehicle and, in some states, outright fraud. Number 12. Unpinning the governor. Company trucks came with mechanical governors limiting engine speed, which capped how fast the truck would go. Drivers saw this as an insult, so in the shop after hours, or with a pocket screwdriver at a rest area, they'd adjust the fuel pump, swap a spring, and suddenly that Detroit diesel would pull well past what the company intended. Some 70s rigs, ungoverned, would genuinely run over 100 miles an hour, and stretches of empty western interstate before 1974 let them prove it. Today, tampering with a speed limiter on a commercial truck violates federal regulations, voids everything with your insurance company, and if you crash with a modified governor, the lawyers will make sure you're personally ruined before the criminal case even starts. And speed was only half the game. The other half was fuel. Number 11. The freight train. Trucks drafting each other saved real fuel, and in 1973, fuel was suddenly the most precious thing in America. So convoys tightened up. 3, 4, 5 trucks running nose to tail at 70, sometimes with a single truck length or less between them, punching one shared hole in the air across Kansas. Drivers coordinated braking over the radio, calling out hazards ahead so the guys behind never had to touch the pedal. It worked beautifully, right up until it didn't. A blown steer tire at the front of a tight freight train was a multi-truck catastrophe, Following distance rules for commercial vehicles are now strictly enforced, and dash cameras and event recorders mean a tailgating trucker convicts himself with his own footage. Number 10. Radar toys. The radar detector arrived in the 70s, and truckers adopted it instantly. The Fuzzbuster sat on thousands of dashboards, chirping whenever a trooper's radar swept the road ahead. The bolder drivers went further, running early jammers that could blind a radar gun entirely so the officer's display just read nothing as 80,000 pounds of chrome and freight sailed past. Detectors were a legal gray zone then, and jammers were barely on anyone's radar. No pun intended. The hammer eventually dropped hard. Radar detectors have been banned in all commercial vehicles nationwide since 1994. Jammers are a federal crime under FCC rules, and inspectors are trained to spot the telltale windshield mounts during any roadside stop. If you're enjoying this ride back to the 70s, hit subscribe. This channel digs into trucking history and forgotten American road culture every week. Number 9. The axle shuffle. When a driver couldn't dodge the scale, he got creative on it. Weight limits apply per axle, not just gross. So drivers learned to slide their trailer tandems and fifth wheel to shuffle weight around before rolling across. The real artists went further. They'd creep across a platform scale at a crawl, riding the brakes, because braking pitches weight forward and can shave hundreds of pounds off the rear axle reading. Some guys swore by bouncing the suspension at the exact right moment. Scale operators knew every trick, and it became a running chess match. Modern weigh-in motion sensors read trucks at highway speed before they ever reach the platform, so the scale already knows your real weight before your creative version arrives. Number 8. The handshake at the scale house. And when the shuffle didn't work, there was always the oldest trick in history. In certain corners of the country, everybody knew which scale houses were friendly. A folded $20 bill passed with the paperwork, and an overweight load became legal. Some operations were more organized than that, with regular monthly arrangements between carriers and the men running the scales. Investigations through the 70s and 80s periodically blew these networks open, and scale house corruption scandals hit multiple states. Today, this is straightforward bribery of a public official, a felony that ends careers on both sides of the window. And the automated systems doing most of the weighing have one great advantage for the state. Computers don't take 20s. Number 7. The hidden tank. Fuel taxes varied wildly between states, and states demanded paperwork proving you'd bought fuel where you claimed. So drivers gamed it. Some rigs ran extra fuel tanks that weren't on any registration, filled to the brim in cheap fuel states, letting a driver run clean through high-tax states without buying a drop while his paperwork told a different story. Purchase receipts got traded between drivers at truck stop counters like baseball cards to make the numbers work. The states eventually got tired of being robbed and created the International Fuel Tax Agreement, unifying reporting. Today, fuel tax fraud is prosecuted as exactly that, fraud, with audits that compare your GPS mileage records against every gallon you claim. And hidden unreported tanks discovered at inspection open a very expensive conversation. Number 6. The ghost co-driver. Team driving let a truck run nearly non-stop, one driver sleeping while the other rolled. So solo drivers invented an imaginary friend. The logbook showed a co-driver dutifully taking his shifts, while in reality one exhausted man was doing every mile himself, coast to coast, catching 20-minute naps at rest areas. Sometimes the ghost was a real person who'd never left home, collecting a small cut for lending his name. Dispatchers at certain freight-hungry companies knew and looked away, because a hot load of produce doesn't care about anyone's sleep schedule. Electronic logs tied to individual driver accounts killed the ghost, and today this specific fraud, if it surfaces after a fatigue crash, is the kind of thing that turns a civil lawsuit into a manslaughter charge. But at least the ghost co-driver kept his headlights on. Number 5. Running dark. Some drivers took police evasion to its logical extreme. Late at night, approaching an open scale or a known speed trap on a divided highway, a trucker would kill every light on the rig, headlights, markers, the whole Christmas tree, and roll past in total blackness. An 80,000-pound truck, invisible, doing 70 through the dark. Other drivers used the same move to slip away after a trooper clocked them, vanishing off the visible road the moment they crested a hill. It's difficult to overstate how insane this was. An unlit truck at night is functionally a wall built across the highway. Today, this stacks charges like firewood, reckless endangerment, evading, equipment violations, and if anyone rear-ends that invisible trailer, the driver is looking at prison, not a ticket. Number 4. The state line sprint. In the 70s, a state trooper's authority largely ended at his border, and every driver knew exactly where that line was. A trucker who picked up a bear in his mirrors in western Texarkana didn't pull over. He stood on the throttle because the Arkansas line was 8 miles ahead, and that Texas trooper wasn't crossing it. Radio chatter would erupt with drivers cheering him on, calling out the shrinking distance like a horse race. County lines worked the same magic on local sheriffs. Interstate compacts and radio coordination between agencies have since dissolved those invisible walls, and fleeing across a state line today doesn't end a pursuit. It upgrades it, turning a speeding stop into felony, evading with a fresh set of charges waiting in the next jurisdiction. Number 3. The West Coast turnaround. The darkest one on this list. The name says it all. A little white pill that could take a driver from the East Coast to the West Coast and turn him around. No sleep required. Amphetamines were everywhere in 70s trucking culture, passed across truck stop counters, sold openly at certain fuel desks, joked about on the radio under names like Benny's and co-pilots. Drivers ran 70, 80 hours on them, hallucinating shadow trucks and phantom hitchhikers on the yellow line somewhere around hour 50. Plenty of men never made it home, and the wrecks were catastrophic. The crackdown, when it came hard. Today, trucking has mandatory random drug testing and a federal drug and alcohol clearinghouse, where a single stimulant violation follows a driver's name for life. Number 2. The rocking chair. The convoy had a formal architecture, and it was designed for one purpose: breaking the speed limit safely at scale. The lead truck was the front door, sweeping for radar and eating the risk. The last truck was the back door, watching for bears sliding in from behind. And everything between them was the rocking chair, where a driver could set the hammer down at 75 and a 55 and relax, protected by lookouts fore and aft. All of it coordinated in real time over Channel 19. It was organized, disciplined, borderline military. It was also, legally speaking, a rolling criminal conspiracy to violate federal speed limits, which is roughly how a modern prosecutor would describe it, right before attaching everyone's dashcam and ELD data as evidence. And number 1, the shutdown. December 1973. The oil embargo has fuel prices exploding, and the new 55 limit is strangling drivers who get paid by the mile. So truckers do something no one anticipated. They stop, not at home, on the interstate. Convoys of trucks halt across all lanes of major highways in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and beyond, engines idling, blocking everything, coordinated entirely over CB radio. And when a second, even bigger shutdown erupts that winter, it turns into open conflict. Traffic backs up for miles. Governors declare states of emergency. The National Guard gets called out. Trucks that keep hauling get their tires shot out, and one striking driver is shot and killed. And it worked, forcing negotiations in Washington within weeks. It remains the single largest act of highway civil disobedience in American history. And every count of it, the blockades, the intimidation, the sabotage, would today bring federal charges that start at conspiracy and go up from there. So that was the 70s. Fake logbooks, ghost co-drivers, radio networks running counter-surveillance on the police, and when all else failed, 10,000 trucks simply parking on the interstate until the government blinked. The trucks are still out there, but the outlaw kingdom that ran them is gone, replaced by satellites, sensors, and software that never sleeps. If you want more forgotten stories from the golden age of American trucking, check out the video on your screen right now.